Christine Caroline U. Peter Francis, née Horsford, a former employee of Inland Revenue Department Carriacou of Leicester, Carriacou, passed away on Thursday, 27th October, at the age of 57. She was the wife of Franklin Francis, also known as Taylorman. She was the mother of Kwame Francis Hamilton, grandmother of Kalina Hamilton, sister of Boris, Julian, and Christine Horsford, and Barbara Pivot, stepmother of Jumali McFarlane and Franco Gabriel, mother-in-law of Clinton Hamilton, aunt of many including Cherise Thomas, Francis and Joseph Julian, Cariel and Jamie Pivot, Kenya and Chrissy James, grand aunt of Khalil, sister-in-law of Frankie, Angela, Girlie, and Kevin Francis, and Carl Pivot, niece-in-law of Margaret and Jean Benjamin and Cecilia Horsford, niece of Anne Roll in the Bahamas, Thomas Sonny Benjamin in England, Roy Benjamin, Leo Horsford, Furnace, Evelyn, Lorna, and Hugh Horsford, caregivers Patricia Bernard and Talia Joseph, close cousins of many including Carl Benjamin, Kitty, Javon Roll, Aline Roll Joseph, Jacqueline and Robert, and Pamela Benjamin, Clement, Saga Thomas, Wendy and Horsford James, Dr. Anne Henry, and Wayne Wilson, close friend of Brenda Prime, teacher Sharon Bishop McLawrence, Suzette George, and Enid Matheson. Other relatives and friends including Francis and Benjamin families, Horsford families of Winter Forest, Belle Plaine and Belle Isle in Grenada, Patricia John and family, Helen Wilson and family, Joseph and Bristol families of Leicester, James family, Gertrude Joseph and family, and Phyllis Marshall and family, neighbors of Leicester and surrounding areas too numerous to mention. The funeral of the late Christine Caroline U. Peter Francis, née Horsford, of Leicester, Carriacou, will take place on Wednesday, 30th November at 2 p.m. The funeral service will be held at the St. Patrick's Roman Catholic Church, Hillsborough, Carriacou, and the interment will be at the Brunswick Cemetery. Funeral arrangements have been entrusted to Lacroix Brothers Funeral Home.
Joseph George, also known as Daniel Jeremiah of Hope St. Andrew, passed away on Saturday, November 5th, 2022, at the age of 99. He was the father of Lystra, Ezekiel, and Augustine Joseph, grandfather of Sislin, Eslin, Margaret, and Jeremiah, Liston and Isaac Joseph, Nandi and Cindy Gulliver Singh, Micah, Samantha, and Alana, great-grandfather of 25, including Fiona, Denise and Tanisha Jeremiah, and Marlon Joseph, great-great-grandfather of 25, uncle of many including John Braffett, Rebecca Panshu, Flora Braffett, Vernis and Jennifer Jeremiah, father-in-law of Ezra Joseph and Danley Banks, many cousins, other relatives and close friends including Anne-Marie Mitchell, Pastor Ashley Church, members of the Grand Bacolet Baptist and Holiness Churches, the Braffett, Mahorn, Jeremiah and Panchu families, the management and staff of M&N Hardware, and friends and neighbors of Hope, Grand Bacolet, Cooma and surrounding areas. The funeral service for the late Joseph George, also known as Daniel Jeremiah of Hope St. Andrew, will take place on Wednesday, November 30th at 1 p.m. Funeral service will be held at the Grand Bacolet Baptist Church, and interment will be at the family cemetery Hope. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacroix Brothers Funeral Home.
Matthew Francis Harry, also known as Bro and Harry of Winter Forest St. David, who resided at Mardi Gras St. George, passed away on Friday, 11th November, at the age of 66. Left to mourn are his estranged wife, Sherry Ann Smith, many children including Siobhan Mason, Genesis and Rohan Harry, Caden Nelson in Canada, Marville, Darville, Kendall, and Kendall Noel, Cassandra Greenwich, Maxine and Anton Isaac, Travis Chetram, Vanessa Noel in Trinidad, siblings Reginald Harry in Canada, Derek Harry in Trinidad, Alwyn Harry, Javon Nixon, Brenda Harry Duncan, Patricia Harry Charles, and Janice Harry Smith, many grandchildren, nieces and nephews, many other relatives and friends and neighbors of Grenville and surrounding areas. A private service for the late Matthew Francis Harry will be held privately on Thursday, 1st December at 1 p.m. at Bailey's Funeral Home Chapel, Carolina St. George. Funeral arrangements have been entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home.
Alva Max Jr. Renaud, also known as Renaud of Seamoon St. Andrew, a former worker at the Ministry of Education, Youth, Sports and Culture, died on Saturday, November 12, 2022, at the age of 43. He was the father of Jalen Smith, brother of Alison McMyer, Alice Renaud Purcell, All Renaud, Lincoln and Michael Duncan in Grenada, and Denise Coxter Lewis in Canada. Uncle of Rhiannon Hall, Cherise Hall, Sir Hannah Hall, Ramon Hall, Isron and Arisa Purcell, Keisha Jack, Aline Renaud, Telly, Marlene, Marcine, Mikey, Desiree, Drew and Derek. Nephew of Gloria Batiste, Mona Renaud, Irma Bell, Jocelyn Renaud, Clarence Renaud and Arthur Renaud. Brother-in-law of Tyrone Buckmeyer, Frieden Purcell and Derek Lewis. Dear friend of Alana Bain, Akeda Vento and Zakia Collins. Many cousins, other relatives and friends too numerous to mention. Neighbors and friends of Seamoon, the Cocoa, Paradise, Telescope and La Follette, the graduating class of 1995 of the St. Andrews Anglican Secondary School, SAS, the employees of the Ministry of Education, Youth, Sports and Culture, especially the unit where he worked, Youth Biz, and employees of the Grenada Development Bank. The funeral service for the late Alva Max Jr. Renaud, also known as Renaud of Seamoon St. Andrew, will take place on Friday, December 2nd at 1 p.m. Funeral service will be held at the Grenville Evangelical Church, and interment will be at the Grand Bras Cemetery. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home. Ashel Elana Mary Landor of Leicester Carriacou, a former employee of Marine Protected Area, passed away on Sunday, November 6, 2022, at the age of 25. She was the mother of Damarley Landor, daughter of Mary Julian and Bernard Landor, sister of Alan Alexander in England, Ariel and Akel Landor, and Kathleen Alexis in Carriacou, granddaughter of Cynthia Landor and Doreen Julian, companion of Quasim Nimrod, niece of Alistair Charles, Bernardine, Bernice, Brian, Dexter and Linton Landor, Ashlyn, Ashley and Fenric Julian, and Veronica Adams, niece-in-law of Rosalina Landor, Barbara Charles, and Dominic Daniel, close friend of Shermaine McNeil, Randy Fraser, Ricardo Landor, Carmi, also known as Jojo, Carmen Phillip, Khadija Felix and Daniel Sylvester, Dr. Tyrone Davis, Dr. Sears and Nurse Coy, Veronica, Shermel, Christelle, and Javon Nimrod. Close cousin of many including Ricardo, Brenda and Emma Julian, Kira and Roshana Landor, Cordelia Charles, Megan, Katie, Kayla, Linton Jr., and Letitia Landor. Other relatives and friends including the Julian, Landor, and Joseph families, the Thorne family in Grenada, Sharon Bristol and family, the MPA family, Louise and Mayoni Joseph, Matthew Joseph and family, Brenda Samuelson and family, Emma Scott and family, teacher Yolande Placid, and friends and neighbors of Leicester and surrounding areas too numerous to mention. The funeral of the late Ashel Alana Mary Landor of Leicester Carriacou will take place on Tuesday, December 6th at 2 p.m. Funeral service will be held at the Leicester Rosary Catholic Church, and entombment will be at the Leicester Crossroads Cemetery. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lackford Brothers Funeral Home. Matthew Durangit, also known as Soft Tire, of Moran St. John, who resided at St. George's Estate, passed away on Tuesday, November 1st, 2022, at the age of 77. He was the father of Paul Badassi, Doreen Benjamin, Evelyn Badassi, Ted Badassi, Joycelyn Francis, Dexter Badassi, and Gracelyn Griffith. Grandfather of 20, including Osbert, Wendy, and Shrika. Great-grandfather of 18. Great-great-grandfather of 2. Brother of Peter, Isaiah, Solomon and Norris in Grenada, and George in England. Father-in-law of Peter Benjamin, Henry Hazard, Leo Francis, and Trevor Griffith. Brother-in-law of Yvonne, Balbobin, Kuman Singh, and Isaac in Trinidad. Uncle of many including James and Albert. Other relatives and friends including Kentuff and the boys by the shop, the Williams family, the Badassi and Durangett families of Moran and Lamode, and friends and relatives of Moran and Lamode. The funeral service for the late Matthew Durangett, also known as Soft Tire, of Moran St. John, who resided at St. George's Estate, will take place on Tuesday, December 6th at 2 p.m. Funeral service will be held at the Beaulieu Seventh-day Adventist Church, and entombment will be at the Beaulieu Cemetery. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacqua Brothers Funeral Home. Ted Roy Badassi, also known as Bungson, of St. George Estate, St. George, died on Friday, November 4th, 2022, at the age of 56. Left to mourn two brothers, Paul in Grenada and Dexter in Trinidad. Four sisters, Doreen Benjamin, Joycelyn Francis, Evelyn Badassi, and Gracelyn Griffith. Brothers-in-law, Peter Benjamin, Henry Hazard, Leo Francis, and Travon Griffith. Many nieces and nephews, including Osbert, Tricia, Desiree, Sharika, Wendy, Kevin, Marvin, Junior, Diane, Neil, and Vanessa. Uncles Balbulbin, Kumansing, Isaac in Trinidad, Peter, Isaiah, Solomon, Norris in Grenada, and George in England. Aunt Yvonne. Other relatives and friends including Marcock, Trevor, Tony, Kentuff, Walter Delbert, the Durangett and Badassi families of Moran and Lamode, the boys by the shop, and friends and neighbours of St. George Estate and surrounding areas. The funeral of the late Ted Roy Badassi, also known as Bungson, of St. George Estate, St. George, will take place on Tuesday, December 6th at 2 p.m. Funeral service will be held at the Beaulieu Seventh-day Adventist Church, and entombment will be at the Beaulieu Cemetery. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home. Francis Christopher Pear, also known as Broco and Pops, of Back Street, Tempe, St. George, passed away on Wednesday, November 16, 2022, at the age of 71. He was the husband of Catherine Teresa Jesslyn Pear, father of Japhet, Shem, Arvin, Ava, and Akim, stepfather of Thaddeus, grandfather of Shammah, Javel, Shemaiah, Jaden, and Levi, son-in-law of Ida and Twine, brother of Joanna, David, Augustus, Samuel, and Michael Pear, father-in-law of Narissa, Shane, and Keisha, uncle of many including Catherine Pear in Canada, brother-in-law of Lucille Glaude, Jenny Thomas, Shanta Cox, Cindy, Denise and Petra Williams, Glenroy, Jervis and Trevor Bartholomew, Neil and Andy Williams. Many cousins, other relatives and close friends, including the Pear family of Marast Hill, the Nicholas family of Grandmall, the Dotton and Vento families of Tempe, Bellevue, and Boca, Jacqueline Glaude and family, the Rocher family of Caливini, Margaret Bartholomew, Elvira Mitchell, Dr. Francis Martin and the pastors and members of the Latter Rain Revival Center, and the community of Back Street, Tempe, and surrounding areas. The funeral service for the late Francis Christopher Pear, also known as Broco and Pops, of Back Street, Tempe, St. George, will take place on Tuesday, December 6th at 1 p.m. Funeral service will be held at the Garden of Remembrance Funeral Chapel, Cemetery Hill, St. George's, according to Pentecostal rites, and interment will be at the St. George's Cemetery. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacqua Brothers Funeral Home. Kenson Peters, also known as KP and Fudgy, of Malmount, who resided at Laton St. David, an employee of Caливini Island, passed away on Monday, November 7th, 2022, at the age of 30. Left to mourn his parents, Rhonda and Stephen Peters, adopted daughter, Sadie Joseph, sisters Alice Marcel, Talisha Charles, Felissa, and Daniela Peters, brothers Kenroy, Patrick, and Stevenson Peters, Anton Simon, and Sean Joseph, close and dear friend Kelsey Noel, aunts Chelsea, Diane, Angela, Maria, Selena, and Nestor, uncles Raphael, Wavell, Glenroy, Jason, and Justin, nieces and nephews Kamosha, Keda, Odisha, Ava, Odian, and KJ, cousins Jarvin, Tamara, and Kevin, sister-in-law Marjorie Joseph, brother-in-law Raul Marcel, Other relatives and friends, Mr. and Mrs. Cohen, Paul, Kelton, Javon, Jason, Danny, Theodore, Williams, Mr. Earl Maitland, Sherrianne, Cindy, Sheldon, Troy, Makita, and Miss Newell and family, Joseph Ragbasing, the Elcock family, the boys at Cafe, Lataunt, Malmont, Calavini Island, and surrounding areas. The funeral of the late Kenston Peters, also known as KP and Fudgy, of Malmont, who resided at Lataunt St. David, will take place on Wednesday, December 7th at 1 p.m. Funeral service will be held at the St. Martin de Porres Roman Catholic Church, Crowshoe, and interment will be at the Churchyard Cemetery. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home. Anna Cador, also known as Mama, of Grand Roy St. John, passed away on Sunday, November 20th, 2022, at the age of 91. The funeral arrangements for the late Anna Cador, also known as Mama, of Grand Roy St. John, will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacqua Brothers Funeral Home. Keith David Caliste, also known as Kazor, and Kazor Ball, of Pomrose St. David, passed away on Tuesday, 8th November 2022 in Canada, at the age of 62. The funeral arrangements for the late Keith David Caliste, also known as Kazor and Kazor Ball, of Pomrose St. David, will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home. Francis Mitchell Kim Andel, well known as Kim and Pei, of Victoria St. Mark, passed away on Monday 21st November 2022. The funeral arrangements for the late Francis Mitchell Kim Andel, well known as Kim and Pei of Victoria St. Mark, will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacqua Brothers Funeral Home. Percival Kenneth Alexander, also known as Paul O. of Snellhall St. Patrick, passed away on Sunday, November 20th, 2022, at the age of 92. The funeral arrangements for the late Percival Kenneth Alexander, also known as Paul O. of Snellhall St. Patrick, will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacqua Brothers Funeral Home. Muriel Albertina Taylor of Griffin Lane, Grenville St. Andrew, passed away on Thursday, November 24th, 2022, at the age of 88. The funeral arrangements for the late Muriel Albertina Taylor of Griffin Lane, Grenville St. Andrew, will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Wayne's Funeral Services Limited. Desmond Collins, also known as Casey or Carlo, of Old Wester Hall, St. David, died on Sunday, November 27th, 2022, at the age of 66. The funeral arrangements for the late Desmond Collins, also known as Casey or Carlo, of Old Wester Hall, St. David, will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home.
The management and staff of MTV extend deepest condolences to those of you whose loved ones have passed on. Thank you for watching.
Hello, I'm Pastor Eddie Lawrence from Alabama in the United States and a personal friend of Pastor Happy Casey. I understand you may be going through a very difficult time today. I want to encourage you with a scripture from God's Word. The Lord says that He is near to those whose hearts are broken. Obviously, with the loss that you are enduring, your heart is broken, and He came to heal those whose hearts are broken. And though you may not feel God's presence, rest assured, He said He would be near to you because your heart is broken. There's a scripture in 1 Peter chapter 5:7 that may be comforting to you during this time. You may have lost a husband or a spouse, a wife, a father, mother, brother, sister, close friend. Jesus said in 1 Peter 5:7 to cast your cares upon Him because He cares for you. Just like the boats out in the harbor here in the St. George area. When storms and winds come, in order to be secure where they're anchored, they have to make sure that anchor grabs solid ground underneath. and the boat can become stabilized. I encouraged you in these days of sadness and grief to let Jesus be the anchor in your life. He'll give you stability during these stormy days. I pray God's blessings over you, and may you feel the peace of God fill in your heart, and may it fill your mind and pass all understanding. May you know that God loves you and that He is with you.